fickle, so unpredictable, here on the SNL Network.
Yes, welcome on in, everybody, to the Saturday Night Network for a little bit of bonus coverage here this week to talk about the third season of Tim Robinson and Zach Kanin's show, I Think You Should Leave. And this is going to be a very fun podcast where we're going to talk about another sketch comedy show, something we don't get to do very often over here, but we'll get to talk about our favorite sketches and moments from that show. Of course, Tim Robinson and Zach Kanin both being SNL alumni. So this will be a lot of fun. I think you should stay tonight and join us for the rest of the show. So let me introduce our other panelists we have here tonight. And it wouldn't be bonus coverage without my man, Sammy Kay. So no longer doing Bupkis with you, Sammy, but happy to talk to you about another show.
Yeah, John, I'm super happy to be here to talk about I Think You Should Leave. I mean, this is a show that me and all my friends love. I had a bunch of friends in town this weekend for a wedding, and we had all watched the new season. We're quoting episodes and jokes here and there. I think I've maybe seen the season like 3 times already. So I have a good understanding of which of these sketches were, great and worth talking about. And I'm excited to dive into those tonight.
Wow. Okay. You are the man for the job. So I'm excited to hear which sketches have been quoted a lot. And maybe there'll be some cultural zeitgeist that'll go on to our listeners once they get that from you. So I'm excited about that. And of course, so happy to get Victoria Franso on the podcast with us tonight, who has some connections to Tim Robinson as well. So, so happy to have you on here, Victoria. How are you doing?
I'm actually super happy to talk about Detroit suburbs finest, Tim Robinson. And yeah, we do have a connection. I have something in common with him in that both of our shows that we performed in at Planet Ant are on the same wall. So I peaked, and then it's downhill from here. But no, truly excited to talk about him just performing in the Detroit area. There's so many references to him and his impressions that have been left on the Detroit comedy scene. So just excited to talk about one of us making it big.
Absolutely. Well, let me give you the background if you don't know much about the show and maybe you're just tuning in for the recap. We are going to spoil everything that just came out in season 3 of the show. There were 6 episodes that dropped on May 29th on Netflix. We had 2 previous seasons. They all have 6 episodes, and that was in 2019 and 2021 as well. And yeah, Tim Robinson, former SNL cast member, so you may remember him from joining the show at the same time as Cecily Strong and A.D. Bryant, and not surviving on the show, but he did continue on as a writer for many seasons, and Zach Kanin as well. And to this day, I believe Zach and Tim submit sketches sometimes to SNL or contribute behind the scenes. So they are very much a part of the last 15 years of SNL, and their footprint is there for sure. So Sammy, I'd love to know, what are your favorite memories of Tim Robinson? What do you think about him, even not just on the show I Think You Should Leave, but just in general?
Yeah, so, Tim Robinson was on the show. He joined SNL when I was in high school still. And I think it was my senior year of high school was when, as you said, Cecily and Adi and Kate had just joined the show. And, honestly, he didn't make a huge impression on me at the time. Obviously, he didn't have as much success that season getting stuff on. There have been a couple sketches that, I've revisited now that, he did on the show where I'm like, oh my God, this was so funny. I can't believe I don't remember this, blah, blah, blah. And, similar to Victoria, I'm, from the suburbs of Detroit. So when a show called Detroiters started on Comedy Central, when I was, I think, a junior or senior in college, me and my friends were super excited about it. I'd recognized Sam Richardson from some things, and then Tim Robinson obviously had that SNL connection. And, once I finally got around to watching that show, I was like, oh my God, this is hilarious. Definitely canceled too soon, but a ton of great Detroit connections and SNL alumni in that show. And, that eventually led to I Think You Should Leave, which for me and my friends, as I alluded to before, is, one of our favorite shows. It came out a little bit before the pandemic. And I feel like, we all kind of got around to finally binging that, at our own pace. The New Year's Eve celebration before the pandemic, December 2019, I remember me and my friends some of us had seen it. And then we had a couple other friends who hadn't, and we all watched all 6 episodes together. and we were dying, and we were seeing how everybody else was reacting to it, and something kind of just clicked there. And yeah, it's just kind of been like in our lexicon, in our language of references that we love to joke about and quote with each other. Coffin flop from season 2. The whoopee cushion sketch to me from season 1 is something that I try to show people when I'm trying to introduce them to the show. And it is just some of the best comedy that is going on, especially sketch comedy that is, out there right now. And, I'm so happy that season 3 was able to kind of live up to the hype. I think there's a ton of great sketches in this season that kind of stand up to the high bar that season 1 and season 2 kind of set. I'm excited to talk about a couple of those in a little bit.
Yeah, so we're gonna get into those sketches for sure. But yeah, I mean, I think You Should Leave is such a memeable show. I mean, there's just so many moments that you can take from these like mini sketches that have ended up going beyond the show itself. People don't even know that these things are from I Think You Should Leave. Like, for example, like that hot dog sketch or the hot dog man sketch. I mean, that was everywhere after the first season. I think of like tables or like the driving instructor with the tables from season 2 as well. I mean, those are types of things that have been going past the show. So I'm sure we're gonna get those things with season 3. But just to take it back a little bit, when I asked Victoria this question, what are your memories of Tim Robinson, particularly like on SNL? And for you, is this where he should be right now, which is creating his own sketch show as opposed to being part of the SNL system that he could have been?
So, I mean, I think very highly of Tim Robinson. Obviously, me and him have similar hobbies with being from Detroit. He performed at Planet Ant, but he also was a Second City uh, performer too in Chicago. So I feel connected to him in some weird cosmic way of performing at these little theaters. But I think he should be doing what he's doing. His brand and his type of comedy it's its own entity. It's like it goes way beyond Saturday Night Live, and I love that he has full creative control over what he's doing because it shows in how excellent everything is. There aren't really any sketches in this season that aren't awesome.
Definitely. For me with Tim Robinson, I really loved him when he came onto the show. I was still looking for that Will Forte replacement. And then Tim Robinson came on and he hit some of the mark that, Will Forte had given me on the show. And like his sketches were kind of weird, but they weren't fully formed in the way that I wanted them to be. And for some reason, it just didn't click altogether. But on seeing him on I Think You Should Leave, I could see that this is definitely the right vehicle for him. So I'm very excited to get to talk about this. And I'll say when Sammy said his origin story with the show, for me, when I first saw I Think You Should Leave, it was before 2019. This was before we were covering SNL on this podcast. So I got to watch the show and I didn't know what to expect, and I didn't fully get it, if I'm being completely honest. And I think this is a feedback that a lot of people have told me when they came onto the show, which is like it moves in such a unique pace compared to every other sketch comedy show that I think you have to like really get on board with it to be able to accept and appreciate it. Because for me, it's like I sometimes found that like in SNL circles, tell me if this makes sense, guys. When we're evaluating SNL sketches, one of our biggest criticisms is often that the sketch will wrap up without a proper ending. But that's one of the best parts of I Think You Should Leave, is that the sketch will finish at such a like weird and random time, or they will just like pivot in a completely different direction. It's like on I Think You Should Leave, we celebrate confusion, but on SNL we criticize it. And I find that so fascinating. Any comments on that?
Yeah, no, that is such an interesting point, and it kind of clicks in when I really think about it. And I don't know why that kind of works in one on one show and doesn't and not SNL. Maybe because it's been on for so many years, and it's kind of not that SNL is like sketch comedy by the book, but it's such like an established institution, and there's so much history behind it, to where I Think You Should Leave kind of being its own thing, being its own brand. Maybe we're more willing to get on board with that. And John, as far as you were mentioning with not getting on the show's wavelength at first, I think kind of the beauty in the sketches that Tim Robinson creates on the show is that you can watch a sketch for the first time and be like, all right, that was okay. Like, it didn't really have an ending, or, I didn't really get that. And then you're either, you rewatch it, or a friend quotes it to you, and just like the out of context sort of reference or meme, as we were talking about before, to the sketch just makes you laugh. And then you go back to it, and it kind of, your appreciation for it grows. And I think for, many of my favorite sketches in the show, it wasn't something that I watched immediately and thought this is the funniest thing I've ever seen. It's kind of the repetition and kind of just taking those kind of quotes and jokes out of context that just make me laugh, days later after watching it.
For sure. Victoria, any comments on how I Think You Should Leave is a different sketch show than watching SNL?
I mean, it's night and day. Well, actually, let me ask this. Was I Think You Should Leave initially Saturday Night Live rejects? Is that what it was?
That's an interesting question. I do have to think that there is probably some overlap there between sketches that I wouldn't necessarily would say are rejected by SNL, but perhaps were created for SNL and didn't work in the SNL format. And we're like, okay, this concept would work much better on this show, where, to Sammy's point, the rules aren't as clearly defined.
Yeah, no, I thought it was initially anything that he had pitched SNL that didn't make it was now on this show.
You might be right.
That was the whole premise. But yeah, no, either way, I think that kind of answers the question. Tim Robinson is incredibly unique. I at least haven't seen anyone else like him. And I think there's a reason that he has his own show, and that he is incredibly aggressive, absurd, wild, off the rails. And while SNL may have moments of those within each sketch, they can't put an entire sketch in that way, if that makes sense. So I think it's very much his own thing, and it's a very different show, which I'm very blessed to have. I love having both options.
Yeah, I do want to quickly add that, this isn't exactly a sketch that didn't make it onto SNL, but I do know, if you guys remember the sketch from season 1 of I Think You Should Leave with Andy Samberg, it's a game show sketch where Tim's hosting a game show, and there's this mascot called Chunky that kind of keeps messing with Andy Samberg. And apparently, I saw an interview, I think with Seth Meyers or somebody, where Tim was saying every time they had a sketch, a table read, that gets cut before dress that, totally bombed, or something they were pitching that totally bombed, him and Zach would refer to that sketch as a chunky. They'd be like, it's a chunky. And, there are certainly, seeds and elements from his time at SNL that have made it onto the show. And clearly there are people that he was on the show with, like Cecily Strong, who, and Vanessa Bayer, who, guest starred in episodes. So there's certainly a DNA of his time on the show, and I Think You Should Leave.
For sure. We got a lot of SNL guest stars in season 1, not so many in season 2, but then a ton in season 3. So I'm excited to get into it. And let's just do that right now. Let's go around the table. This will be the way that we'll do things tonight. We're going to go around and we'll each pick sketches that we want to talk about until we run out of time and we're, tired of doing this. So Sammy, let me head over to you. What is the first sketch you want us to get into from this? And we'll tell you which episode it is in, so you can go and find it as well, in case you wanted to pause the podcast, watch it, and come back to our thoughts.
Yeah, I have a lot of sketches I want to talk about, so I'm just gonna pick one, because I'm gonna hope to try to get to as many as possible. I'm gonna go with the Pay It Forward sketch, which is from episode 3. This sketch takes place at the drive-through, where, just to kind of set up the premise a little bit, Tim Robinson is at a drive-through. He's ordering food, and then he's like, you know what, I'm gonna pay it forward, and I'm gonna pay for the guy behind me. Maybe it'll catch on, and he's feeling like he's doing a good thing, and there's like all this sincere music in the background, and then the juxtaposition, hard cut to him slamming his foot on the gas, going all the way back around in the drive-through, and then getting into a confrontation with somebody, being like, come on, I'm doing something, I gotta be somewhere. And then his whole bit and his whole ploy is that he wants the person that he just paid for to pay for his food, except this time he orders an insane amount of food. He's like, I want 55 tacos, 55 hot dogs, 55 burgers. And like the bill is just absolutely insane. He's like going beet red, just absolutely, classic Tim Robinson fashion. And, and that's like the premise of the sketch. And it is just exactly the type of humor that, going to the season, I'm like, I need something that has this like insane, almost like the Joker energy that Tim Robinson can pull out of him, where he can just on a dime go from like the most unopposing, sincere looking guy trying to do the right thing to like totally being selfish, aggressive. The music changes and everything. And this is just fantastic. And I want to hear what you guys have to say about this. So I'll stop talking.
First of all, I started this one as well because I thought this was so funny, especially as he just like races back, orders a million stuff. And then, at the end, like one of the great buttons on this sketch is that there's another customer, a woman, who then orders the exact same stuff as Tim does. So it completely like negates the whole process. And he's like, it was so funny and such a great concept. And it reminded me because when I used to, before COVID, I worked at this company, and on the way to work, there was a Starbucks drive-through. So I would go through the Starbucks drive-through on the way to work. And when I got there one day, and usually I would go like around the same time, so it'd always be like the same people. I'd recognize the cars or the people in the cars. Anyways, I got there one day and I'm driving up, and then they told me that the person in front of me paid for my drink. And I was like, oh, that's so nice. Like, it's like, anyway, I like, didn't even like think this was a thing. And I saw who it was. And then I was like, I felt like yes, I should pay for the person behind me, but like I want to find a way to like get this person back and like pay this person back for like week after week. So I'm every day like I'm trying to go and I'm trying to get in front of the person who paid for me, and I could never make it happen. I always miss them by like 2 minutes one way or 2 minutes the other way. And I just would like try and like there was like one person between us. I'm like, no, I need to like get in. Anyways, so I've had, this has been like a social situation that I've been thinking about for years, that I'm like, it's so funny. And the fact that they like, put this situation in place was such a fantastic sketch. One of my favorites by far. Victoria, what did you think of it?
I loved it. In fact, it was the first, I guess, sketch I saw before I watched this show, because it made its rounds on social media, TikTok, Instagram Reels, and all that. I've never thought of that or doing that, but I'm like, oh, I'll pay it forward and then racing back just to get myself paid. I mean, like I said, he's incredibly clever and absurd, and it's incredibly funny. I do love the little twist of the woman behind him reversing back and doing the same exact thing of 55 burgers, 55, and it's just really funny. And I think the button of this, which the sketches don't really have a real button, as we just mentioned, to kind of, wrap things up. But I do love, I can just run. It gets out of his car. It just runs. It's just
a great ending.
Yeah, it's perfect. And then gaslighting the guy to where he's like, I know you had good intentions. It's like, no, he did not.
Well, the best like throwaway line from the sketch is him saying like, I just wanted to do something good this morning before alcohol class. Like just thrown there. Like it's great. It's so good.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up also. They always have these like random non sequiturs that's like such a Tim Robinson thing. And he brings this up here, and it's so great there. This is the fourth sketch of episode 3. So if you're going to look to check that out, it has to be on everybody's like top 5 list. I think this was, I called it the next burger sketch, but the pay it forward totally makes sense. And I think this was a fantastic one. So definitely check that out. Victoria, which is the next sketch we're going to talk about?
All right. It's not my absolute favorite, but it is up there for me. And it's going to be driving Crooner. The idea of someone being like, hey, if you ever don't drink and drive, just give me a call. And then they get into that car with you, and it's absolute nightmare. I don't even
Let me just say for the listeners, this is the 5th sketch of episode 1, if you're going to look for it.
Which I'll say this right now. I think episode 1 and 2 are my favorites. So I might be pulling a lot from those two. So just letting you all know. No, but it just, it's like he's like a coworker's DUI inspires him to be like, I'm going to be the hero. If you need a ride, just give me a call. But then when they get in the car, he's just an absolute maniac with like decals, and he's trying to like make it that he's smoking a cigar with a hat, and then I guess what he says is true of like, oh, they're trying to kill me, and then these like frat guys come up next to him like, I'm gonna kill you. Show us what's on your window, and it's just a freaking fedora. And not to mention the hand motions and the mouth motions are kind of gross, but I love them a lot in this context only.
Yeah, this was really, really funny. Love the decal part and the frat boys coming in at the end. I think that was a great ending for this sketch. Sammy, what do you think of driving Crooner?
Yeah, definitely on my list as well. I think it's funny how Tim Robinson like has like these kind of like motifs, or like there's things that he like kind of references in, a lot of sketches. Season 1 and 2, there's a lot of mentions of hot dogs. And surprisingly no hot dog mentions in this season, which is maybe one of my most disappointments. But in this sketch, we got the cigars, which kind of comes up later in the Will Forte sketch, and kind of the sort of mobster look, which he's kind of played off of in previous seasons. Just the reveal. You first kind of just see Tim, making that kind of motion, and the camera just like stays on his face for like 5 to 10 seconds, and you have no idea what's going on. Like, is the joke that like Tim is like actually like drunk, and he's just like says that he can pick people up and be their designated driver? But yeah, I had no idea where this was gonna go. The line about the decals was so funny, and just the fact that somebody would want to kill him because he's just driving around trying to make money, with these decals on his side, just really funny. And just like the line where he's like, I just got to figure out a way to make money on this thing. It's too good. That's something that, as far as like quotables go, like that's certainly going to be something that me and my friends are already quoting and will be quoting in the future. So this one is so fun.
Also, I thought he was doing an Adam Sandler impersonation. And I thought this was going to be a weird homage
Kinda like
to
this,
Adam
yeah.
Sandler. And I was like, what is he? Is he silently like quoting Billy Madison or something? And he was just going to play that type of quirky character or whatever it was. But it went way off the rails. I also don't know what crooner means, and I think maybe that was added to the absurdity for me.
So a crooner is like, I believe, this is not like Webster's dictionary definition, but I believe a crooner is like somebody who performs like a jazz bar, and he's like with the top hat and like the sax and all that stuff. Like, it's definitely music related, but
I figured, but I was just I just looked it up. It says a singer, typically a male one, who sings sentimental songs in a soft, low voice, which is exactly how I would describe Tim Robinson.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely. And also, Sammy, you said there was no hot dog references, but I believe in episode 5, the first sketch, the one where they're seeing stuff, and they do see a hot dog suit guy at the like standing at the table.
Oh, okay, good. I'm glad. See, This is the type of show that like you got to watch it again and again to get all the references. So thank you for that.
Yeah, so that's a good Easter egg there. But so, we have to talk about some of the cameos that happened in these different episodes. And they had some of my favorite cast members of all time appeared in I Think You Should Leave season 3. And I'm going to start with obviously the Will Forte sketch from this one. And we got a great Will Forte sketch in season 1. But here, this time in episode 2, this is the third sketch where Mary drops off a bowl. That is so funny. I always wonder, like, I don't think that Will Forte and Tim Robinson are the same archetype, but there definitely is, like, in the pie chart, like they definitely have like some crossover of weirdness. But everyone who listens to this podcast know that Will Forte hits my funny bone more than anybody. And here he ends up lying under this woman's car because she parked on the sidewalk and his ponytail got stuck, and he's dealing with like a very long ponytail. And he's like screaming for help, and that he's hurt. The ponytail is hurting. How could she park on the street? And it's just like so ridiculous. And they get into this like insane conversation that just devolves into like zaniness, where they're, how come you can't get out? Well, it's stuck, and I'm gonna miss my lunch. And then, can you just, can you like Google disgusting toilet bowl and send it by text to my friends? And then, she sees a picture trying to figure out how long his ponytail is. And it goes like his ponytail goes down past his butthole. Like, it is so weird. And then there's like one of my favorite Will Forte things of all time is when like somebody is mocking him in a sketch, like doing the same thing as him. And you have the neighbor across the street with the ponytail who's mocking him and ends up putting his hand in the dog shit. It is so ridiculous, this sketch. You have to go watch it. This is the third sketch of episode 2. But thank you, Will Forte. My biggest laugh by far was just getting to see him do this. Victoria, what do you think about Will Forte in the Mary drops off the bowl sketch?
That was so stupid in the best way. Like, it was so dumb. The thing is, I was just like, am I getting old and cranky? Because in my parents' neighborhood, there's someone who always parks on the sidewalk. I'm like, they're so annoying. Like, what if people want to walk? And I just, again, taking the things that we all think about and making them into these absurd moments. Like, I'm just going to say this. The Will Forte character felt like it was making fun of me. And
Okay, explain.
Because I complain about when people park their cars on the sidewalk, and it's so annoying. I'm like, that's so, like, if you're walking, you have to walk around. Like, God forbid you walk around a car in a
Let me ask you something. What if the driveway is so large that it could fit 2 cars, but the second car just reaches out onto the sidewalk a little bit because, you want to get the second car there?
That's fine. But in my parents' neighborhood, they could fit, like, there was a lot of, there's no one, this guy always parks and there's no car in front of him. He just parks right there. I don't understand it. But I would probably do the same thing if I was in a fit of rage. So it just felt like maybe an homage to me, and they don't even know me. But no, it was very stupid. And I do love the karma in the end of the hand and dog shit.
Do you also have screenshots of cigars all over your phone?
That's my business. That is my business. Yes.
Sammy, what do you think of this sketch?
Yeah, just jumping back onto the conversation about parking on the sidewalk. Whenever my sister visits us, I'm like renting a house. And like she always, like, my car is not on the sidewalk, but she'll like park behind me, which granted I could probably, pull up a little further in our driveway, but like, no one's ever here. So like, it doesn't matter. Like, she's always parking on the sidewalk when there's plenty of street parking, and it pisses me off. So I totally related to the sketch. It was like, if we had like a SNL network bingo, you picking the Will Forte sketch just makes total sense. And it's just a great sketch, like just fantastic. There is something about like the Will Forte and Tim Robinson comedic energy. I feel like it's like a real recognizes real thing where Tim's like, you kind of paved the way in a sense for this sort of weird stuff to be in kind of mainstream comedy. Obviously, we sometimes can, tie, from, one point to another between like Kyle Mooney and Will Forte as like having that sort of, obscure comedy spot on SNL. But yeah, this sketch, there's so much Will Forte screaming and yelling in this sketch. Gave me a lot of MacGruber vibes, especially from the MacGruber movie, which I found to be great. Yeah, the screenshots of the cigars, there's just like so many little touches that I think you should go from like a good comedy show to a great comedy show. Everything just feels so lived in, and there's every opportunity where they can kind of punch something up to make it just a little sillier and a little more out there. I feel like they always take those chances, or they kind of go for it. And yeah, this is just great. And him just having the beef between him and the guy across the street who also has a ponytail, and when the guy with the ponytail first kind of introduces himself into the situation, he's like, this is a problem for us. Like, and he's like showing off his ponytail. Like, you can't park on the sidewalk. Like, and it's just like, you're basically making it as like, this is a common issue that everybody with a ponytail has to deal with. If, they're parking on the sidewalk, they obviously have to crawl underneath. It's just fantastic. And yeah, I'm really glad we got to talk about this.
Wait, really quickly, going back to Will Forte, the just juxtaposition of a Will Forte next to a Tim Robinson. I never thought about them together, but I guess, would you consider them opposites that complement each other?
I wouldn't necessarily say that they're opposites that complement each other. I think that this is just my personal bias is that Will Forte does weird in almost like a little bit of a like he doesn't put his foot all the way down on the pedal. That's my analogy of him sometimes is like he'll never take it too far where I think that Tim Robinson will take it too far. And if you like that, then Tim Robinson appeals to you. But for me, I like the fact that he's like always like I think that Will Forte will go really weird and then pull it back a little bit and then go like weird again and then pull it back again. And it's like the magic show that he does with that is so great in his weirdness. Whereas sometimes like Tim Robinson will just like go weirder than any man will ever go. So I think that they're I wouldn't say that they're opposites, but I think that they do the same thing in different ways.
Got it. No, I would agree with that. I meant more so opposite of how far they're willing to take it.
Yeah, I
Like
think that like I think Will Forte, I mean from my evidence, I think Will's willing to take things like physically very far, but I think that I think that like Tim Robinson like will take a joke and just beat it into the ground in a way that Will Forte won't. And I think that
Yeah,
might be the difference.
for sure.
Yeah, but this was a really fun sketch to have on there. And I do one of my favorite things about I Think You Should Leave is that not every sketch has Tim Robinson in it. Because if you're like it's basically like if you really enjoy Tim, you don't have to be overloaded with him in every episode. There's like one or two sketches at times that mostly have other people where they focus on that. And in this case, Will was a great compliment here. Sammy, what is next on your list?
Ooh, okay. I think the next sketch I want to talk about is Darmine Doggy Door. This is from episode 2. This is sort of like a fake ad commercial parody, infomercial sort of thing, which I think throughout the 3 seasons of the show is an avenue that every time they kind of go back to it, I think they always kind of knock it out of the park. And the premise of the sketch is that Tim Robinson is advertising this product that he's trying to sell. It's a doggy door that has kind of like an electronic sensor to where, the wall will go up if, your dog, is trying to get into your house. And he says, that way, raccoons won't enter through the doggy door or burglars won't, or this thing. And just like this grotesque creature, just like that you have no idea what this kind of monster, it legitimately is a monster, what this could be, kind of, shows up. And he's like, because I saw that thing came in here when I was on the couch. And he just kind of like starts screaming like, what the hell, like, well, about, this creature that shows up. And it turns out as the sketch progresses that it wasn't a monster or a demon or anything like that. It was just that his neighbor and him got into a fight over the property line at their, between their houses, because the neighbor we see is like jumping on a trampoline. And so that's the point of the dispute. And it's actually a pig in a Nixon mask that came in because it was so dark and he was so startled. He just kind of thought it was this creature, and it kind of keeps jumping back and forth between like the actual pig in a Nixon mask and this just like claymation sort of weird thing, which is just so funny. And there's just so many little details, kind of like what I was saying before. He just throws like all these little details into the sketch. You get more backstory than you ever think you would need. He's talking about how he's, barely been sleeping in the same bed as his wife ever since she got flipped by a swing dancer at a wedding 8 times. One of the best throwaway jokes in the entire season.
Well, on top of that, they cut to an image of her being swung at a wedding. It's so funny.
And it cuts back to him. He's just like, I didn't like that very much. and the commercial keeps continuing, and there are just like incredible kind of revelations that are made about him, about how he thought he was going to get eaten, and for a second he's like, well, at least I don't have to go to work tomorrow. And he's like, what have they done to us? What has happened in this world where I'd rather be eaten than have to go to work? Just so many incredible lines. And it just, he takes what could have been just like a basic premise about, I guess, a doggy door and, not wanting things to come in. And he just totally takes into a direction that you aren't expecting, and kind of throwing in these kind of B and C, I don't know if they're plot lines or just through lines that are going on in his life. And it's just hilarious. And I loved it. And it's just so good.
Victoria, what do you think of this one?
I would say this: if this was an SNL sketch or a digital video or whatever we want to call it, it would probably be my favorite commercial parody. It was so good. Like the little details. I mean, and Sammy just listed everything through, but from like, I haven't been sleeping well since the guy flipped my wife. He flipped my wife 8 times. Or, the line of like, my life is not where I thought it would be, like 50 seconds. I thought that was a real monster in the world, or whatever it was. Like every single piece of it is just absolute nonsense, but nonsense that somehow works together. Like I guess you'd call it organized chaos, and that every beat is together. So as someone who does comedy, likes to pitch sketch ideas and all that, he provides his POV, which is incredibly important, but then he heightens it with this game. And that not just this sketch, but with like every sketch he does, and just the heightening of it and the games he's playing. I like really just want to Airbnb his brain for a solid week and just find out what's going on and how he does it. Like those little details like truly make it up. I think my favorite was like, because my neighbor called me like a liar and a thief, just like Nixon. Like who would even think of putting a pig in a Nixon mask? I don't know. It was creme de la creme. I would say that's probably my top 5 of this entire show, but probably like I said, if it was on Saturday Night Live, my favorite commercial parody.
Yeah, you go into Tim Robinson's brain, you might see a volcano or something like that.
It's a tiny dagger over there.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Victoria, what's next on your list?
Oh man. I have to think about it. I would probably say Jelly Bean.
Okay.
That was, I think it was like, his name is Richard Brecky in that. And so it's like typical Tim Robinson losing your shit. He's playing this silent performer whose latest review, Jelly Bean, is just about like heartwarming stories, and all that, but no one can tell what he's doing in these. And he says, if I talk, you get money, but I never talk, only to be like proven wrong. And so like, what is that? What the fuck is that? It's like, bah! Like, and it's like flipping out on people. And so, he's like, leave me alone, blah, blah, blah. I think he like was saying, it's just frat guys and bachelor parties, leave me alone. And yeah, it's awesome. It's just meant to be the silent character trying to stump people. But once they ask what he's doing and they're like essentially mocking him, he goes berserk. But that's his like trademark way of being, is this absurd, aggressive man who's yelling all the time.
Yeah, so this is the first sketch from episode 3, if you want to go back and check that one out. And it's a really fun concept that we get here, which is interesting, which is like, can you make money by pulling off a show and convincing yourself that you're not going to talk or let the audience make you talk, and that you're playing that game back and forth? And it ends up getting very aggressive and hilarious to see how this one will devolve. Sammy, what did you think of here? We had Richard Brecky as Jelly Bean.
Yeah, this just another great. I'm just gonna like, this whole show is just me being like, yep, that's great, that's funny, that's great. But this kind of goes back to the types of things that maybe Tim finds funny or that he's interested in. His character is like, I'm really into old stuff. I don't want to talk. Like he wants to be like this kind of silent film, sort of Charlie Chaplin, Buster Keaton type of character, except we're in the modern day where like those sort of things aren't as, I guess respected or loved. And, he's kind of putting himself into a corner here where he's like, well, if you make me break, if you make me talk, you get money. And, it just becomes a competition for the people in the audience. It's almost like, he's on a game show and like they're all, or like a reality sort of competition show, and they're just all trying to get him to crack it'd be like if people at SNL, in the audience just like started like yelling things at the performers to try to get them to break or mess up in their sketch. Like and they
you
got
suck.
money. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Except it's not April Fool's for Colin Jost. Yeah, no, everything about it was great. And then I love how at the end it does it, I think at first it kind of feels like the audience is mainly, people from out of town or whatever coming to see a show, but then it's exclusively frat boys and bachelor parties, and they're just there's just a concussive sort of volume coming from the audience, just trying to get him to crack and break in any way possible. And then he freaks out as like a Tim Robinson type of character does. So yeah, that's just another banger from season 3.
It's great. Okay, I want to talk about this sketch from episode 5. This is the second sketch. Actually, episode 5 is interesting. There's only 3 sketches, and that one, it's the least amount in any of the episodes. But the second sketch is really interesting because we get an appearance from another SNL Tim. Tim Meadows is in this sketch. So not Tim Kazurinsky, but Tim Meadows is in this sketch. And, from one Tim to another. And this is basically taking place at a wedding, and there's a photo booth. So I'm sure if you've been to, events before, weddings, there's plenty of photo booths here. And, Tim Meadows is the father of the bride and comes over, and they want him to take a picture, but he's a little apprehensive. And he says, okay. And he ends up grabbing a prop after everybody does, and he grabbed the last prop, which ends up being a purple feather. And you if you get this great physical moment where he puts the prop into his mouth and then like throws up everywhere, and he just creates this whole thing where he's like, I didn't want to even do this in the first place, and then I have business deals on the line, and he just starts this other man starts taunting him, and they're going back and forth, and it devolves into like this great a moment where, and I think Tim did this so well on Tim Meadows did this so well on SNL, where he could go from like really crazy to really straight very quickly, where he says, keeps talking about how it should have been Barney. He was trying to be Barney with the feather, and I hope I'm explaining this well, but it just basically it's Tim Meadows with the feather, and it is so great here. The second sketch of episode 5. Sammy, what do you think of this one?
You did a great job explaining that. Just want to give you your flowers there.
Thanks.
Give you your feathers, maybe.
Yeah.
I love Tim Meadows, again, fellow Michigander, the Detroiter. So, really cool to see him pop up in this sketch. Obviously he's kind of the star. He is the driving force of this sketch. And kind of like what you were saying, like the way he's kind of able to go from just like this calm, collected dad at his daughter's wedding. He has so many great, like, I don't know if they're dad jokes or just dad-isms where, the photographer's trying to get him, into, taking the picture. And he's like, oh, great. What did I sign up for? Just like the such stereotypical dad stuff. And then immediately, like any sort of, I think you should leave sketch kind of can get to, just gets, escalates and goes up to 11. And the fact that like the first thing that this character thinks is, when he's trying to think of something to do with the feather, is to beat Barney because Barney's purple. And, I could have been like Barney's hair, like, it's just cloth is just tiny hairs, just an absurd thing. And then I think a really underrated aspect of the sketch is, you kind of start diving into it, is there's this like guy with a mustache who's also taking a picture, and I'm not sure like what the relationship is there, but he has just like this funny voice and way of talking where he's like, I've got all these business deals on the line, and I'm selling the Belling ball, like this toy ball, and he's just like getting into it with Tim Meadows. And I don't know where they found this guy, but he was just very funny. And I agree that 3 seconds is not enough time to think of something silly. There's so many times in a group photo or something like that at a wedding or a graduation picture where they're like, do something silly, and I don't know what to do. So I totally relate to this.
I always resort to blue steel. Like I'm just like, I don't know what else to do at this moment.
That's good. I'm going to start working on my blue steel.
Yeah, exactly. Victoria, what did you think of this sketch?
Well, I mean, I agree. What was like 3 seconds to think of something silly? That's fucking insane. And that's absolutely correct. You're putting a lot of pressure on people. And I mean, I would expect his reaction to be a real reaction one day. Like, you can't keep doing this to people at weddings. It's supposed to be a joyous moment, and now you want me to be something I'm not for a photo. That's how I feel. No, but I I just think it's very like him gagging and deep throating on a purple feather and then throwing up. I think maybe the highlight of everyone's 2023 once they watch this. So you tell me if you don't think about it.
I can confirm it's the highlight of my 2023.
I would definitely like. I just wouldn't describe it as like deep throating, but I accept the premise.
It's a Detroit thing, John. You wouldn't get it.
It's deep throating.
No, Detroit throwing. No, never mind.
This is great.
I'm sorry to my mom who's listening. She doesn't even know what it means. It's fine.
Well, Victoria's mom. Yeah, no, just kidding.
Yeah, no. She's a little immigrant lady. Leave her in purity. But no, and I love watching Tim Meadows kind of play something he doesn't normally play. He's usually like from what I've seen, usually like mature, cool guy. He's had some moments where he's freaked out, like in Mean Girls or something like that, but he usually plays a cooler head. But seeing him freak out over something so mundane and going ballistic over it was actually pretty funny. And then of course the Michigan element just makes it a little bit better for me. But yeah, no, I think Sammy hit the nail on the head on everything. And sorry, I said that he deep throated a purple feather and gagged on it.
It's fine. You always said it again, but it's okay. I was gonna ask, you two are like somewhat around my age. Were you Barney people when you were kids?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I watched Barney, but I was certainly more of a Blue's Clues guy.
Got it. Yeah, I was big.
Yeah. I think I'm closer to you, John, in age, and I think Sammy's a few years younger than us, so that checks out.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's just
okay.
The Gen Z Blue's Clues connection.
All right, Sammy, round 3. Take it around the round table. Start with a sketch you want us to talk about.
Let's stick with episode 5. You know, like you said, only 3 sketches. But it ends with this sketch that I don't know what you would call it, John. I just called it talking about your kids, or yeah, that's like something that's a theme in the sketch. But this is kind of I don't remember the exact runtime of it, but it takes probably like a solid chunk of the episode is just this sketch. And there's been a couple times where in the show they've kind of just done like an epic sort of sketch that can be like 8 to 10 minutes long and just really drill down on an idea, which they certainly do here. This sketch guest stars Jason Schwartzman. They're at some sort of mixer or something, some party. Not sure if they're coworkers or what the relationship is there, but Jason Schwartzman is starting to tell a story about his kids, and he's just like, please don't let me talk about my kids again tonight. Like, please stop me if you do. And, obviously Tim Robinson's right there, and his character's like, oh, don't worry. Like, you're not going to talk about your kids an ounce, which like the way that he like, just like the delivery of that line to me, I'm just like, oh man, we're in for such a great sketch. And what this could have been was just, a very obvious sort of like, all right, you see that for the rest of the sketch, Jason Schwartzman is going to try to talk about his kid, or he's going to end up bringing up his kids. And then Tim Robinson shows up and is like, yeah, you said you didn't want to talk about your kids. And that's kind of how the sketch starts out. But there's kind of a point halfway through, and just to backtrack a little bit, every time Jason Schwartzman is about to talk about his kids or starts talking about his kids, Tim Robinson just does some like wild thing at the party. First, he starts, riding a dog like a Bronco. And then like him and like these other guys just start doing this like line dance sort of thing. And that keeps kind of escalating. And every time he kind of goes back to Jason Schwartzman, he's like, you said you didn't want to talk about your kids. Like, just talk about something else. And there's like a point halfway through the sketch where Jason Schwartzman's like, you know what? And he starts like talking to his friend. He's like, what's the craziest thing you've ever done? And the music changes, and you kind of keep going back and forth between Jason Schwartzman kind of thriving at this party, finally not having to talk about his kids, and Tim Robinson having to, be be all stressed out because now he's gotten too popular at this party, and there's these people who are like, all right, what's the next crazy thing we're gonna do? And he just has like this like cast of characters just following him around like an entourage. That is just so funny. And what I love about this sketch is that, kind of like what I said before, is that you kind of saw where it was gonna go. And like that alone, I was getting a lot of laughs out of that. But to me, this sketch kind of becomes an A+, where he kind of takes you down this different avenue where you have this kind of, opposing storylines going on. And yeah, this is just fantastic sort of epic sketch play here in this sketch.
I love this one. I mean, I think what was so fascinating about it is it felt so different in tone than a lot of, I think You Should Leave sketches. The length was obviously a big factor here, but it really felt like there was a solid beginning, middle, and end. And there was different character viewpoints, which is so interesting. Like usually most, I think You Should Leave sketches are like, scene is happening and then one person creates an awkward scenario, and then it's either everybody else's perspective on that person or it's the person's perspective on everybody else. But here you actually have, it's the story of person A and person B and how their two nights devolve in different places. So you have Tim Robinson's character who ends up thinking that he's doing this noble thing to his friend, but ends up having to guide this group of bandits all throughout the night, throughout the party, to continue to follow them. And then he's like gets increasingly frustrated. And then the other guy, meanwhile, is frustrated that he can't talk about his kids, but eventually learns that he found a way to have fun again. And it's like a mini movie. This is a really fantastic sketch, and I was so happy that we got it. Victoria, what did you think of it?
I agree. This was okay. I have a million thoughts, but I was gonna say I agree with you in the way that the scenic styles of this is different. Usually it's like a fish out of water where they're the sane one, but everyone else around them is insane or center and eccentrics where everyone's like, it's just off. Like one person's always off or whatever it is. No, I think it was a really great sketch. I forgot Jason Schwartzman's name, so thank you for saying that. But did he pretend that like a dog was giving him?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's one of the kind of crazy zany things that he has to do, because then then he's able to get Jason Schwartzman to not talk about his kids.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that goes to what Jon was saying earlier of him taking it way too far, like that poor dog. But no, it's for all the chaos, like he becomes like the life of the party, and become embracing himself outside of being a father. And I think the runtime on that was 6.5 minutes, which for this season is a good chunk. But yeah, no, it's I think it's, no offense to my friends with kids, but it's what I imagine them doing one day. And I'll have to be the Tim Robinson and getting them to not talk about their children. No offense. Love them.
This was a great pick, Sammy. It really just a top tier sketch here. And that episode 5 is a really fun episode to watch. So if you're going to go back and start anywhere, I think you could definitely start with that episode. Victoria, what's next on your list?
Okay, there are 2 left that I really want to talk about. I'm wondering, for time's sake, should I choose my absolute favorite or my second favorite?
We'll do one more round after this. So pick one, and then if it doesn't come up, we'll give you another one.
Okay, I want to talk about Street Sets with Fred Armisen. It's just he's so an SNL alum, a great SNL.
This is
alum,
episode 1, the sketch number 4.
Is it what? Okay, yeah, that seems right. So he is a dad hoping to scare his children into being good kids through a really weird video of him beating up a kid. But as it's unfolding and as they're watching, it's just so obvious that he kind of paid stunt doubles to play these children. It's like elderly people playing children. And it's like a fake street set, and it's just like, what's it called? It's like not pulled off. He's like, I paid $15,000 for this, and he has these kids like yelling, crescendos that like, you need to be scared straight, and they will never mess, with their dad's kitchen Marble Island again. So it was just really absurd. Yeah, no, he's just like, "Oh, I paid so much money for this," and it's, like, showing a kid, but then, like, this really old man. So just, like, opposite times of life, like, they're just starting life, they're near the end of it, no offense. Um, yeah, it was so again, stupid in the best way.
I wonder if Fred Armisen is the person in my life who I've seen on the most TV shows. Like he is literally everywhere all at once. It's crazy. Like I don't know, I don't know if you guys feel differently, but I'm like any show I've watched, there's been at some well, not any show, but most shows, any comedic show, there's been a somewhat of an appearance of Fred Armisen, and he's so made for the show. Like just to have him in there and have him do like something quick, it's just like junk food. It's so great, and I don't know that the sketch itself was so like amazing that I had to like think about it more than watching it for the first time, but I just that he brings laughs no matter what, and in this format I think because it's short and sweet it really works for somebody like Fred. Sammy, what do you think of this sketch?
Yeah, I think you kind of hit the nail right on the head there for me. Not one that, on my long list that I, felt like kind of made it to that kind of upper tier of sketches. But obviously, great to see Fred Armisen on the show. He totally fits in this world. I wonder if this is one of the shorter sketches. I feel like maybe in this season, so maybe it kind of left me wanting more, or wanting them to kind of escalate it a little further. Obviously, it's an absurd concept, but in this show, it almost feels like something that if it were on SNL, like it kind of like the ceiling as far as absurdity there is a little lower. So maybe, yeah, on an episode of SNL, I would find this to be like a really funny sketch. But for me, when surrounded by kind of the other stuff that was going on this season, not so much. But I did really enjoy like just the small jokes about the marble island, or the marble counter at the end there. That the kids keep talking about how like
Do you think that was like a nugget of like or an Easter egg to like you got to get yourself some marble columns?
I mean, maybe like that is like 100% such a specific thing that if you were to tell me that was the case, maybe that's the case. But yeah, so there are little things here and there for me that I enjoyed, but as far as quotables or anything, it's just not in my top 10 or anything. But still fun to see Fred Armisen on the show.
Yeah, you suck, Victoria. Just kidding. No, it was a great pick. I'm so happy we got to talk about that one because
I think it's a great pick.
Yeah, it's a great pick.
Really great pick.
Yeah. I was gonna say, wait, going back to Fred Armisen showing up and everything, I think you're correct. Like he's truly in everything. Like Brooklyn Nine-Nine, he made an appearance. I Love You America, he made an appearance. Curb, Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, Comedians
Wednesday.
Yeah. No, whatever. Anyway, he's everywhere. Oh, also he was in Easy A. Fun fact, he played the priest.
Yeah, I mean he
Fun
just
fact.
like shows up everywhere. It's amazing. All right, so I will pick for my next pick the sketch I want to talk about. This one really appealed to me because this was a concept that was so smart, and I'm gonna say like yeah, like sure, John, but like I've actually thought about something like this before, and to see it actually be fully formed in the way that Tim put the sketch together was so great. And that's at the last sketch of episode 2. There's the live taping sketch, which is like if you ever watched a sitcom like Friends or something like that with a live audience. Like I've watched a lot of like documentaries on Friends where they go and they like show the audience from the other perspective and like how the stage like looks like with people there. And the thing is, it's like you go and you sit down, and I've actually been in a live audience for stuff before, including SNL. I've gone to like Big Brother. Like there's a lot of like situations where I've been there, so I could experience this. And basically what happens is like they tell you like, okay, like now you clap, like now you laugh or whatever. Anyways, so he's there and he's listening to them explain the rules, and they're like, well, this is going to be shown to millions of people. So just keep in mind, like you want to laugh and you want to make sure that your voice is heard. And in his head, he's like, oh my God, like this is going to be shown to millions of people. And he's like, I could say anything right now. So like once people are done laughing, he like knows that the mic is above him. And in his mind, he's like, I could say anything right now and people are going to listen to me. So he's like, TK Jewelers is a scam. And he starts talking about this watch that he bought, that as soon as he bent his wrist, all the pieces of the watch went everywhere. And it was a scam. And then like it continues like joke, joke, joke. The people are laughing. And he's like, L&L limos is a scam. He's like, I went into this limo with this woman, and then there was this like compartment there, and this guy, like there was a party happening, and a guy would put his hand in the ice, and was wearing a Super Bowl ring, and he starts like talking about all the stuff that's happening. And then in the control room, they're like, is somebody talking? And they go out, and then it ends up devolving into a point where he stands up and he ends up explaining to the entire audience as well as the people at the show what actually happened with these scams. So instead of conventionally what you would think, which was he would get in trouble, everybody else gets in on it. And then we do get the flashbacks to the actual moments where he was scammed. So for me, this was like so well put together and definitely in my top sketches from this episode. Victoria, what do you think of this one, the live taping?
I thought it was super fun and such a fun way to play on being a live taping. Usually the issues with the folks that are like the actors in that sketch versus the audience. Usually the audience is reacting to a mishap that's happening on set. So it was really fun to kind of turn the POV and have it from an audience perspective. And I love that he has like activist mindset of like, if I can get one person, if I can change one person's life, and then the director, producer be like, all right, we'll keep it in, kind of like negotiating with him at the very end too is really funny. Like there, and like just absurd exaggerations, like 150 springs hit her in the face and the 300 springs are in her soup, just like absurdity. No, I think it was really fun, and I think it was again just that whole unique perspective of something that the audience member is doing, but that's not heckling the actors. It's because usually that's the game of something like this. He just put a really great spin on it, so I thought it was a really great and well written out sketch.
Sammy, what do you think?
Yeah, this is great. Me and my friends yesterday were at a wedding, and we're on a party bus, and we were making so many references and like to the sketch, making jokes about how like, oh, I think there's a black piece of plywood at the end of this bus here, and I think I saw somebody with a Super Bowl ring stick his hand underneath the plywood and grab some ice. Yeah, just very, very absurd sort of things to kind of complain about and try to get on your soapbox about. And just like being able to kind of hear about everything going on and then kind of see at the end was really great, because I kind of thought this was going to be the sort of thing where we hear about all these kind of crazy happenings in this character's life and we don't ever get to see it. And sometimes you see it and then it's not as funny as you imagine, but in this case, it 100% was. They were able to capture that all really well. The springs popping out and just going everywhere. Like it actually was as, chaotic as the way he described it. And yeah, I mean, this is just a really, really good sketch. And one other thing I want to add about it is that I feel like for a sketch like this, it could have easily just been, people getting mad about him, talking, during the thing, but it like in kind of, typical, I think you should leave fashion. They're able to kind of skew the way you think it's going to go. And people kind of being on the side there at the end kind of threw me off. And I found that kind of perspective on the situation to be a lot funnier than, just we have this annoying person in the audience that we have to deal with now. So I'm glad that they went in this route for the sketch.
Totally. All right, let's do one more round and we'll talk about the final 3 sketches. I think there's 27 from the season, so we'll get to 12 sketches that we'll talk about our top 12 from this season of I Think You Should Leave. And Victoria, do you want to start? Because I know that there was one other one that you were thinking about, right?
I lied. There were 2, but I have to choose one.
Okay. Do you want Sammy to go and then see if that one's left for you or no?
Yes. Go ahead, Sammy.
Okay, I got this. I'm going to go with ABX Heart Monitor, which is like an ad for, a heart monitor. Again, another sort of ad commercial parody sketch. Or you're going to say what episode?
Right? Sketch 3, episode 3.
Episode 3, which, such a good episode of the season. But the premise of the sketch is that it is a sort of commercial parody about a heart monitor, and Tim Robinson's character was had like thrown up while he was at Club Aqua because he had a heart attack, and so his doctor, played by the great Tim Heidecker, who has been on the show before and is so funny from Tim and Eric. He pops in as his doctor, prescribing him, the medication, and is able to monitor his heart, because of this heart monitor. And it just goes down this, they kind of devolve into this path where, they're talking about like, so you were out like while this was happening. He's like, oh yeah, I was at Club Aqua. He's like, how the hell did you get into Aqua? And he tells him how he built the deck, and they just start talking shop about clubs and how Tim Heidecker's character really wanted to get into Club Haunted House, and he actually wanted to get into Club Haunted House even more than he wants to get into Club Aqua. And he keeps asking Tim Robinson's character if he could take him along because clearly he's big in the club scene. And Tim Robinson's kind of just like, yeah, we'll see. Like, he's very like non-committal about the whole situation. Clearly doesn't want to hang out with his doctor, and it kind of just keeps building up from there. Where every time the heart monitor goes off, Tim Heidecker's character is like, "Hey, your heart's going nuts. your heart's going nuts. You're Club Haunted House." And Tim will say stuff like, "Oh no, I was jacking off." He's like, "For 15 minutes," like, and is trying to make up any excuse to not bring his doctor out with him to the club, even to the point where he's at the club and his heart's going nuts again, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm jacking off again." He's like, "I saw you in line. We're outside," and the whole thing is just ridiculous because he takes what is just a typical commercial sort of fake ad, and he kind of builds this world and builds a storyline between these characters within the actual ad while still being within the confines of a typical sort of commercial. And everything about it is so funny. And I love seeing Tim Heidecker in this show. He's had so many great sketches from season 1 to season 2. And seeing their dynamic together is so funny. And I think as far as quotables go, like, again, the show's only been out for a week, but me and my friends a couple times have texted each other like, your heart's going nuts. Your heart's going nuts. Are you at Club Haunted House? Just stuff like that. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one.
Yeah, I love the ending where they talk about how the big deck that he built at Club Aqua collapsed and that Kim K's head fell off. It's just like so weird. But Victoria, did you like the ABX Heart Monitor sketch?
Yes, and that was actually what I was just about to call out, is how silly the ending is of like the bouncer coming like, "We have to close all clubs. There's been a tragedy," as if that would ever happen, and then being like, Kim Kardashian's head fell off. No, it was great, and I love that Sammy called out that they're developing this relationship within the ad, but still maintaining the fact that it's an ad. So that was a fun twist on it.
It's great. So Victoria, do you want me to go or do you want to go?
You go.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna pick a sketch. This is probably, I would say, out of like the Will Forte sketch made me laugh the most. I'd say this probably was like my second like laugh out loud in my rankings. And this was from episode 4. It was the third sketch, and this is the Gelutol sketch where they're like a bunch of people are like hanging out. I guess it's like at a party, and Tim, a guy's like, looking in the mirror, and he sees that like he's losing his hair and he's all upset. And Tim Robinson comes out and says, he recently took Gelutol, which helped his hair grow back. And he's like, "Oh my gosh, like I want to take this, like whatever." And then a third guy shows up. He's like, "Are you guys talking about Gelutol?" And he's like, "No, we're not talking about Gelutol." And then he's like, "Don't tell the third guy." And he like hates the third guy, so he doesn't want him to know. And he's like, "But he already knows the name." He's like, "But he doesn't know everything about it." And there's this whole like weird, they go down this like rabbit hole of craziness where they're trying to like avoid telling the third guy, and then like all three of them get into this like weird triangle of fights with each other where like like at one point they're saying how like the guy has been a good soldier, and that Tim Robinson now wants to control the type of hair he's gonna get when he grows back. So he wants it. He's like, "I deserve to know. I deserve to know what type of hair you're getting. I deserve to control it. So I want you to get curly hair." so weird. And then there's this whole thing about how I think it's like the third guy's wife is there, and like I think it's supposed to be like a St. Patrick's Day party, so everyone's like wearing green, and then they like blast the heat at one point, so she has to like take off her jacket. Am I mixing up things, or am I getting this right, Sammy?
No, that's right. That's right.
Yeah. I have like a lot of notes for this one. It just like it devolved into absolute craziness. But this is one I would suggest you watch and check out because it keeps going in these like very weird non sequitur directions. And like this is like if you like that type of humor from Tim Robinson, like this is it. This situation is utter ridiculousness. So, Sammy, what did you think of this hair loss sketch?
Yeah, it's just another example of like an ad or a product and just kind of going down like just like the longest, deepest rabbit hole of where a sketch like this can go. I love there's just so many details in the sketch that I really enjoy. The fact that the ad is for a drug called Gelutol, but he's like, but he already knows the name. So like, why do you care so much that we're talking about it with him? He's like, because that's not the name. He's like, what? You said the name was Gelutol. He's like, no, it's not. And, that's just what I've been telling you it's called. And you got to get it from me. And I'm going to control what your hair is going to look like. And the guy that like both of the actors, like the guy who he's talking to, Tim, and is trying to get him to take the medication, and the other guy, both like super well cast. The guy just has like the third guy just has like the perfect bald head for a sketch like this. Like, he's bald, but like has just enough hair where like maybe he could do something to save it. And yeah, it's just like so ridiculous. And the way that you're talking about how your notes are all jumbled, like this is like, as far as like these sketches go, I know they all go into crazy directions, but like I think if you were to, look at your notes or the script for this one is like absolutely bonkers and absurd.
Yeah, like there's like craziness in this one. They're like one point, like the guy's like playing with like a remote control car, and then like there's like tell him what we're like what should we tell him we're talking about? Tell him we're talking about fingering. Like it was just like this so weird. Victoria, did you like this one?
Yeah, it was all over the place. It was all over the place. I was gonna say like when he like the guy comes up, he's like they're talking about sex or fingering or like trying to getting killed to prevent like helping an enemy or something like that. It was just wild. And I just think it's just funny. It's I think a classic Tim Robinson rage sketch, which always will never not be funny.
I will say this would have been and could have been a really great Will Forte sketch. I think that Will would have done really well in the Tim part here, and I think that would have actually elevated the sketch because I think like that type of weirdness I think plays really well in Will's voice a little bit. But I really enjoyed this one regardless. All right, Victoria, you have the last pick of something we're going to talk about tonight. So which one is it?
Okay, so it's really hard because before the show I said Barley Tonight was my absolute favorite, but I think I'm going to talk about Summer Loving. With just an honorable mention to Barley Tonight. I think I really love Barley Tonight, but I think the one that got the most laughs out of me was Summer Loving. So if you are a Love Island, Love is Blind, Bachelorette person, which I'm not, but if you are a fan of those shows, I think this sketch will speak to you the most. It's essentially like it's a dating show of like all these bachelors, going after this bachelorette situation. And, she pulls him and someone else. And the first guy, she says, we don't have really much in common. And for Tim Robinson, her reason for calling him up is because he's ziplining too much. And it just seems like he's there to zipline. Cut to him like making rounds in the pool. And then she was saying, when we were reprimanded you to join us for dinner, you ate so quickly and then went back to ziplining. And it's just like, it's like a montage of him like jump after jump into the pool. And so it's just, yeah. And then there's like another like butt rock guitar solo. It's just like so corny. But my favorite part of this is she's like, all right, we're not, I think his name is Ronnie in this sketch. She's like, all right, you're not going to like move forward. He does this stupid, I think that's what made me laugh the most. He goes, oh, are you sure? And just like this pose is like a little kid. It was just so dumb. And just kept asking, oh, are you sure? Are you sure? And it just, I think that got the most out of me. I think it just caught me off guard. I didn't know where it was going, and I think it was just delightful.
This was really funny, and I do watch a lot of these shows, so for me, like, this was a good take on this stuff. The actress that was playing the Bachelorette in this case, or whatever you would call her from this episode, was Jessica Parker Kennedy, who I know from the Flash TV show, who I've seen a lot there, and she's a really great actress. So this was really funny to me, and I agree. And I think what I really liked was that in a later episode, they did do a callback to this sketch where they did Summer Loving Farewell, where they went to go like check in on his goodbye to this. And I think they did this in a couple of other seasons as well, where they went and checked back. But if you look at the fourth sketch of episode 4, we get back to the zipline guy. So Sammy, what were your thoughts on Summer Loving Farewell?
Yeah, I think there have just been so many comedy shows or, sketch shows that have done their kind of take on this, to where the fact that they kind of found this sort of very obscure pocket here to satirize the fact that when you're on one of these shows, you're sometimes, at a resort, or you're at this really nice mansion and there's all these amenities, and somebody who's like going on one of these shows just to take advantage of the pool, or in this case, the zip line, it was so funny and specific to me. I love there's just like, so many like little details. Obviously, like the big driving comedic force of this sketch is him, falling into the pool from the zip line. And this kind of sketch, the rhythm of those sort of cuts to him dropping into the pool reminded me of Coffin Flop from season 2, where they just kept cutting. They just kept cutting to, people flying out of coffins, and here they just kept cutting to him like flying into the pool. And you think like they're doing it maybe too much, to where like, is it still funny? And then it just continues to be funny. And yeah, but like I said, lots of little details here that I like. And he gets into an argument with this guy who's in charge of the ropes course, and he just keeps saying like, shut up, Mike, like over and over and over again. And it's just the sort of way that this was put together, and the thing that they chose to satirize here, was kind of something I hadn't seen from these sort of parodies before. So I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, this was really fun. Overall, I'm happy that we got to talk about so many of these sketches from season 3 of I Think You Should Leave, especially because SNL obviously ended early. So for us to get some more sketches to talk about is always really fun over here. Sammy, I'm curious, how would you compare season 3 to the other 2 seasons? Where does it rank for you?
Ooh, that's really tough, because if you had asked me after season 2 if I thought season 2 lived up to season 1, I would have said like right away, like, no, I think season 1 was better. And then now, over the last 2 years of rewatching, it's definitely elevated. I think there are certainly, I don't think we talked about any sketches from episode 6. I found that to be maybe, weaker, but like overall, there are some absolutely classic sketches from Tim Robinson here, that kind of live up to the previous seasons. And I think the fact that I think in, each episode we were able to get 1 or 2 of those was great. And I would love to, see this continue. And keep bringing back more SNL alumni to be a part of the show, so we can rent 6 episodes of time and Tim Robinson's Airbnb brain, as Victoria said earlier.
Right, and we didn't even get to talk about a sketch that featured Beck Bennett, which was the first time I've seen Beck Bennett since he was not on SNL anymore, and it was a good sketch, so I recommend you go and check that one out as well. Victoria, so did the show stack up to your expectations?
Yeah, if I had to rank the seasons, I'd probably do 3, then 1, then 2. Happens to be Chicago area code, just a coincidence. No, I think for season 1 was just because, which actually I Googled this while you're talking. Tim Robinson did reveal that some sketches were originally written for SNL and were rejected. So not all of them, but they're essentially ones that didn't make it. But thank God, because now we got all of this. But I think the excitement of season 1 is great, but I love the content of season 3 the most, leaving season 2 to be the last for me. It's just, the wild mind of Tim Robinson. I also want to call out, like, his face adds so much value to what he does. Like, you know what I mean? His expressions and his mannerisms, his physical comedy, but like especially what he does with his face is so crucial to what he does. So I think if you were just listening to it, let's say on a podcast, you would enjoy it, but like to actually watch it is just beautiful because his face is just making. I think that's why I really love the summer loving one because of his face while he was ziplining, and just at the end his face of crinkling up his face when he's like, "Oh, are you sure?" Yeah, he's brilliant, and I would say he would probably go down as an all-time favorite for me.
That's awesome. Yeah, I agree. This season to me was top tier. I think you should leave. So I think you could check out most of these episodes. You're going to find great stuff. I think we talked about at least 2 sketches from episodes 1, 2, 3, and 5. So, those are definitely the top episodes if you're going to, and you can really start it at any point or pick up at any point. So I think you should definitely do that if you're thinking about checking out the show. And, I hope you enjoyed our bonus coverage here. We did Bupkiss earlier, last month, and now we did a little bit of this. And maybe throughout the summer, we'll pop in on a few other things, but we will turn our attention to SNL for the rest of June. And Monday nights is our summer podcasting night. So we will be back most Monday nights throughout the summer, including next week, where I'm hoping our expectation is that we will have an interview with a current SNL cast member. So that is what is on the docket for next week. And if that doesn't come out, it hopefully will be the week after. But right now we're scheduled for next week for that. So that will be fun. And I hope you will enjoy that as well. We also have some SNL stories with alumni. How about some point counterpoint coming up, and then some superfan takeovers as well. So plenty of things happening here over the summer. And I hope you continue to stick with us throughout this long hibernation between 48 and 49. Sammy, thank you for joining us tonight. So great to get to talk about this with you. Anything you would like to tell the listeners?
John, it has been a pleasure to talk about, one of my favorite shows. Obviously, SNL is an all-time favorite for me, but I think You Should Leave is, also one of my favorites. So this was a lot of fun. You guys can find me at that Sammy Kay on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Obviously, with the writer's strike going on, if you're looking for something to watch, please feel free to go back to our catalog of Superfan Takeover episodes where, me and the Superfans talk about, some of our favorite sketches in SNL history. And I know that we have one on the books coming up that I'm super excited to, announce soon. So, check that out when that happens.
Yeah, I will say for that Superfan takeover coming up, Tim Robinson will probably be discussed that night. I think he is an option on the board. So
yes,
that'll be fun to get to when we get to that coming up in just a few weeks. Victoria, thanks for joining us as always as well. Where can the listeners check out everything you got going on?
You can find me on Instagram at Victoria F with the first I as a period. If you are in Chicago, please come to the Second City on June 12th at 8 p.m. I will be performing sketch ideas. So just come and tell me if they're good, bad, funny, not funny, and I'm open to listening to anything that you've got. And I do also want to say this about Tim Robinson. Watching season 3, as someone who's kind of finding their way in the comedy world right now, he really did inspire me and encourage me just to be myself, and that's totally okay. And that's going to be totally funny for some group of weirdos who watch too. So kind of just reminded me to be myself in this whole thing. And yeah, I just want to say that to him. So if he ever listens to this, that he knows that he made an impact some way, somehow.
Yeah, you're going to inspire a whole group of people to say the word deep throat.
Deep throating a feather. Yeah. And gagging on it. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah, this was really fun. I hope you enjoyed it. Please let us know if you did in the comments. Make sure to smash that subscribe button on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify to never miss an episode. You can turn on those notifications to find out when we are live, and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram to check out all of our summer content. We have some fun things coming out over the summer as well on social media. All right. For Sammy Kay and Victoria Franso, my name is Jon Schneider from the Saturday Night Network, and we will see you next time, everybody. Have a good one.